Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pool Boy Olympics podcast.
We have cracked out the Olympics jingle, which can only mean one thing. We are heading inexorably towards the Olympic Games later this year, and the first step towards those, of course, is the Olympic Trials, British Championships, which will kick off in a few days' time in London. No Bob for this episode. I'm Steve, of course, and Katie is here with me, so we're going to take a look forward in this episode to what we might expect over those championships at the London Aquatic Centre. And Katie, we love Olympic year, don't we? And Trials is just the first bit of build-up towards the Games themselves.
Yeah, get really, really excited for Olympic trials. Love seeing people qualify who are not necessarily expected to. So really looking forward to it.
And, you swam Olympic trials a couple of times. For those who are going to that meet, they're going because they've qualified. They want to compete at that meet in that pool. It will be great. It'll be an exciting experience. Of course, everyone will be nervous because it's a national meet and there are other things at stake, such as European Junior Championship selection and what have you. But those who are going who think they actually might have a chance of making the Olympic team is a whole new level of pressure, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in that position, but I think you always go with hope, but I think it just is it's the highest possible stake that these swimmers face. Going to the Olympics is basically the ultimate prize until you get there, and then you're suddenly vying for potentially being Olympic champion. But yeah, I think it'll be huge levels of nerves, huge levels of excitement. I've got the excitement, and I'll probably have the nerves, weirdly.
All right, but before we get into the minutiae of competition in London, there was a big bit of breaking news today from Freya Anderson, who has revealed that she has been suffering from glandular fever, that she is not sure that she will compete in London. She is entered. She says she will be there. She'll be training and supporting her Bath teammates, but they'll make a late decision on whether she actually competes. That is obviously, Katie, not the way she would have wanted to start Olympic year. What do you make of that?
I think it just must be so incredibly stressful for her. Everything builds towards this 4-year cycle. I know it's only been a 3-year cycle, but building up to the Olympics and knowing that you're not able to give everything that you want to give, or that your body is not letting you, must just be the hardest thing. These athletes give up so much to try and achieve a spot in the Olympics or the Worlds, or whatever it is that year, and probably to feel like that's potentially being taken away from you is a really tough spot. And she's a great member of our team and has been for many years, and it won't feel the same to not have her there. So I really hope that she makes a speedy recovery, and I'm very hopeful that this is not necessarily the end of her journey to Paris.
Well, as you remarked to me when we talked about this beforehand, her message on Instagram was not the kind of 100% doom and gloom that you might expect, that this was the end of her year, that that was it for 2024 for her. So there was an element of hope left in there. Even if she doesn't swim in London, there would seem to be plenty of scope for the selectors to take her to Paris if they decide that they want to. I'd imagine that they'd obviously want to see her prove her fitness, but there are definitely routes in the selection policy that would allow them to pick her. So I think there's still a chance that we'll see her in Paris, and that would obviously be a big boost to the relays and all that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and personally, I would use my discretion to name Freya Anderson to an Olympic team if it was in my hands. She's been a really reliable performer for us. So unless A, we get a load of absolutely blinding performances from other swimmers, which would be great in itself, or B, she's really, really not well enough to go. I hope that we'll see that discretion exercised to give her a place on the team.
Well, while we're talking about selection policies and discretionary picks that the selectors have, let's take a very quick run through how selection will work. I will link in the notes to this podcast my detailed guide about how the selection policy works, and you can find that and read at your leisure. But in quick summary, British Swimming have set a whole load of qualifying times. They're a little bit easier than perhaps they have been in recent years, but they're still quite tough. If you win your event and you break those nomination times, you get your spot. If you're one of the top 4 in the freestyle events, or one of the people that would make up the medley relay, if those quartets make their qualifying standard, you're on the team. And then after that point, the selectors have discretion to basically do what they want. And that's the point which is probably included for situations exactly like this, where they can decide they think Freya needs more time, they think she'll be a valuable member of the team, and they can pick her. And once they've gone through that process, which might also include extras for relays or whatever, they can then move on, and runners-up who also make the nomination time should get picked as well. And then if they still haven't got up to the maximum of 30, they can pick some more people. So plenty of scope to get a team together, and not the end of the road for Freya, we wouldn't say at this point, but we hope that her recovery keeps going well, and we'll see her back at her best soon. But turning to matters where selection will be decided in the pool, we'll start at the very end of the meet, because it's become the customary sign-off for British trials meets, the men's 200 freestyle. It's an absolute lottery, Katie. I mean, you could probably come up with 5 different combinations of the top 4 if you tried hard. So looking forward to that one to close the meet off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's probably my highlight of an event. I don't know if you're right up there, and you're one of these guys who 200 free is kind of your event. I don't know if you're excited or if you're cursing being a 200 freestyler. I mean, being on that team is probably your best shot at getting an Olympic medal, maybe an Olympic gold. They've done it before. So there are going to be a number of guys really vying to make the squad, but there are going to be absolutely world-class people who don't make it, and we've seen how close it's been in the last few years, in terms of top 4, top 5, top 6. There could be someone who's been a regular member of that team who's left at home. That's how close it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you think you've got the defending Olympic champion, the world champion, not counting the most recent worlds, obviously. A former world champion. You've got the Olympic silver medalist, Commonwealth champion. It's just crazy the depth that's in that event, and you could easily see Tom Dean as defending champion not even get the chance to swim the individual event. It's crazy the quality that is going on in that race. But equally, as you say, it's kind of self-fulfilling, because everybody wants to be on that relay team, and everybody now, or everyone who's a freestyler to some extent, is looking at what they can do in 200 free. So should be very, very fast, I think, is our conclusion.
Yeah. I think there's no one who's going to be thinking that they can relax in their 200 free. Everyone's got to be all in at trials to try and get one of those spots.
Yeah. If you had to put money on it now, if you were a betting person, where do you think you would put your money?
Matt Richards, Tom Dean.
Well, I think that's the logical choice, I have to say.
Yeah, but now I have a horrible feeling, because you should never write off Duncan Scott. You should never write off James Guy, but I think they're just behind it in my mind at the moment, but I feel like Duncan Scott could prove me wrong. And, James Guy's the relay man. That doesn't mean that he can't make top 2, and we've seen him do it multiple times.
He has been in extremely good form in the early season relative to his, historic norms. He was 146. I think, well, Duncan's went 145 at Worlds. All the others have gone 146 already. So,
well, no one come at me angrily, because this is a very difficult decision.
We'll let you off, because whatever you say, someone could argue the opposite. So, all we will say is that's going to be an absolute cracker. And if you can get to London for that Sunday, or if you can switch on the streaming, then you absolutely should, because it'll be a great way to finish the meet, guaranteed. Similarly, I guess we could say there is a bit of excitement for the men's 100. Obviously, it's a similar thing with the relay. Everyone wanted to get on that. And that squad. Matt, again, probably the favourite, but you could pick 3 from about 5 for the second spot. And that relay, fingers crossed, they'll get it right this summer, but everyone will want to be on it.
Yeah, it's another one. It's a genuine chance for an Olympic gold, and we haven't tested it. We haven't had, the opportunities that we would have liked to test how that quartet or 5 or 6 or however many we end up taking sort of stands up on the world stage. But I think it's another one where everyone's going to want a piece of it. There's a real possibility of, at least an Olympic medal. I say at least, you know what I mean. But we've suddenly got, I think this is the thing, as soon as there's a focus and there's an opportunity, a load of people throw their hat in the ring or start to focus on that event and start to level up, much in the same way as we've seen happening in like Australia with the women's 100 free. There's just the depth is insane. And we're suddenly finding that, having had 1 or 2 100 freestylers, we've suddenly got like 6 or 7 really, really competitive guys, which is really exciting.
Well, I wanted to mention one of those 6 or 7 that you were just alluding to there, as someone perhaps we should keep an eye on, certainly for that relay squad, which is Alex Cahoon, who was a key member of that 4x50 team that did so well at European Short Course before Christmas. He swam a PB 48.7 just a few weeks ago in Ponds Forge, so he's obviously moving in the right direction. And I think what we've seen in previous Olympic years is that momentum seems to be a really big thing. I don't know what your view of this is, but you sometimes see people coming from 3 months out maybe, and they just keep getting better and better, and all of a sudden they come to trials and they do something astonishing. A couple of examples that struck me, Chloe Tutton and Tim Shuttleworth in 2016, 2 good examples. We had Alicia Wilson in 2021, who you kind of see them coming, but you don't necessarily think they're as good as they turn out to be. And those are the people we like to see making a name for themselves. I mentioned Alex there. Anyone that you are keen to keep an eye on?
Ooh, are we freestyle only, or can I?
Well, no. Let's open it wide up.
Well, I am, and this is a very odd thing for me to say because I don't know how breaststroke works, but I'm very excited about the women's 100 breaststroke. I think there are some people really making a move, like Angharad Evans. We've got Imogen Clark, friend of the show, and and Cara Hanlon. That's suddenly quite an exciting event, and I don't necessarily mean that in a they're vying necessarily for a podium spot, but it's an event that we've had a little gap in, and it's really like the Olympic year is such a year of opportunities, and I really feel like they're taking the opportunity, and that also has a knock-on effect on relays, which is really exciting. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We've also seen Eva Acaro do a brilliant 100 free and drop down to a 54. I'm not exactly sure point what, but just recently, which is great potentially for the women's relay as well.
54.64. If you're interested, that's pretty decent. When she wouldn't have hit a taper, that was a few weeks ago in Sheffield as well. Yeah,
so it's sort of happening, and it's almost like there's some sort of magic around the Olympic year. I think it's the prize is kind of there, and it as we said, it's the pinnacle of the sport, and people just want it so much, and you suddenly don't have time to hang around and want it. It's right there. You've got to do it. And I think that just spurs people on, and some people, the Olympics just comes at exactly the right time. You've grown, you're getting stronger, and your training's all coming together, and you just happen to be improving at that point. But I do think there's something about it that can just push people on.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Angharad is an interesting one because she's been so fast. I mean, I wondered if she might break the British record at the Edinburgh International, if she missed it by a tenth or something, a couple of tenths. But she doesn't do huge meters by all accounts, so it'll be interesting to see how much more she can drop across a taper, because she's doing relatively little meterage and focusing on skills and specifics and what have you, which is obviously working brilliantly for her. But will she be able to, drop another 0.5 or something into championships, or will Cara Hanlon, who's perhaps coming off a bit more work, maybe will drop more from where she was in Edinburgh, which was still very good. So I think there's a good battle to come in that one. I think I'd also throw the men's backstroke into a similar sort of position. I think we know to some extent what we're going to get from Ollie Morgan. He's been excellent over the last 12, 18 months or so. And we'd like to think that he'll go at a 52 point and that will be a great step forward for him. But behind him, there's a right old queue of people who would like to think they could do the same. We've got Jonathan Adam, who's at 53.4, so he's probably on paper the next most likely. But Johnny Marshall, who swims over in the States, has been sort of setting all sorts of NC2A records or school records, SECs and whatever, and we don't know how his training is focused towards NC2As, which take place this week, or trials. Obviously, short course yards to long course meters, something of a strange transition. But how do you feel moving from the bathtub to the big pool figures in this sort of situation? Because he has been going very fast over there.
Yeah, and I think he might have just broken a Ryan Lochte record, and he's obviously an Olympic champion in his own right, and you could get really excited just on that basis. But it is tough to know how it's going to translate, particularly when you're probably going to have tapered for a meet that's taking place this week. Then you're going to have to get on a transatlantic flight and immediately switch to long course and kind of try and carry the taper. It's quite a tough ask. We've seen it work for Alicia Wilson. I'm not quite sure about how the timing was, but for the last Olympic trials, she obviously came back immediately after, well, I don't know if it was immediate, to be honest, women's NCAAs and came back and made the team. But it will be tricky, but also really interesting, because I don't think there's quite the same pressure on that backstroke spot as there has been for the last few years, in that we're not quite sure that team, where that team is, because we don't know how Adam Peaty's sort of doing in terms of his return to fitness and return to the top of the sport. So I don't think there's, it doesn't feel like everything's hanging on that backstroke spot as to whether, they just make a final, or they get a bronze medal, or they get a gold medal, which might be a good thing in a way. I think there's a spot there, but it's just a normal spot. It might be a medley relay spot, but it's not a medley relay spot, and can we hang a medal around their necks now? So it's good to have options, and I'm sure it's a nice thing for Luke Greenbank to be able to focus on his 200 and not necessarily have to also make himself a 100 swimmer, which I don't think is somewhere that he's naturally sat, although he's done a jolly good job of trying for us for the past few years.
Yeah, well, I think that will be another excellent race to watch in London. You mentioned Adam. Obviously, we spoke at length about him after the World Championships in February. He will have had a taper this time coming into these championships, because he needs to, like everybody else. The time is relatively modest. I think on the 100 breaststroke it's 59. Let me just check. 59.4. So he went faster than that three times, I think, at Worlds. So you'd like to think he'll make the time. He still needs to win the event, obviously, to be sure of going to Paris. But you'd like to think he would probably do that based on his Doha form. More interesting is how much he improves from Doha, I suppose, Katie. We spoke about his start, so we'd like to see his start be improved. But we should probably hope to see him down in the low 58s if everything's going to plan.
Yeah, I'd hope so. I mean, he has been sort of steadily improving in the last few meets we've seen him do, but there haven't been that many of them. We don't have an awful lot to go on, but certainly, Worlds was a decent performance. It's just not Adam Peaty his absolute best performance. I don't know if we've seen Adam Peaty at his absolute best, or if there's kind of more to come. Obviously, we'd hope there's more to come, but he's had to come back a long way, and he's been through a lot. So we don't know how that's impacted him, but I think he'll make the team, as you say. That time looks very achievable, and I just think his sort of mental strength has always been there, and I think that sort of alone will see him through. And just a little bit more time to keep working on the things that he's, we already know that he's working on, and improving things like the start, will hopefully give him even more confidence going through to Paris, assuming that he makes the team.
Well, there was quite a revealing interview with him in The Observer a few days ago, which I would recommend everybody seek out if they've not read it already, which he kind of revealed quite how low he had got at the start of 2023, when obviously he pulled out of last year's British Championships. So he, frankly, it sounds bad enough the way he describes it now that I think we should just be pleased that he's back swimming and happy, and whatever happens, will happen now. But yeah, I think we can be fairly sure he'll go to Paris, and then with a few more months after these championships, who knows what he'll be able to pull together when he gets there. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how he moves it on from Doha. Now, we started off this chat talking about Freya Anderson, but regardless of what happens with her, I think we'll quite likely to see a Freya on the team regardless. Freya Colbert won the world title in the 400 IM a few weeks ago. I know, Katie, you perhaps think she's got a lot more to give than we saw in Doha. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Obviously, you can only race who's there. But I don't know what her best event is yet. I mean, I'm sort of inclined to think that she's got a lot to give in a 200 free, but it's an absolutely crowded event. Whereas I'd say that there's probably a little bit more of an opportunity in the 400 IM at the moment. So I think that's probably why her focus looks like it's been, on the medley a bit more. But yeah, I would expect to see her on the team in at least one individual event, but I think she could make it in more. She's interesting, and she's improving a lot pretty much every time she swims. So I think I'd be amazed if she's not on the team. It's something I feel like would have gone very wrong.
Yes, well, I mean, we kind of know her as an IM swimmer, don't we, really? Or have known her, and then you kind of look into what she's achieved in the 200 free, and she's the fourth fastest British performer all time. It's kind of just snuck up on me. I thought, I wonder where she ranks, and knowing that she put into a really good sort of opening relay leg in Worlds last year, and there she is, 156.1, just behind the other Freya, in fourth spot all-time GB, and yeah, huge potential. I mean, she could easily go 155 this week if she's on form. She has, though, opted out of the 200 back. I think we were debating whether that would be her event or not. The clash with the 200 IM in Paris, perhaps a factor. Maybe just trying to manage a program with 400 IM coming up. Well, actually, 400 IM's first, isn't it, at the Olympics? So first day, so that maybe is less of a factor. But
I've never been sold on the 200 back. I don't think that's the one for her. I'm sure people who know her far better than me will tell me that I'm wrong. But I see 200 medley, but that's a pretty crowded event, even just on the GB side. 400 medley, 200 free. I mean, goodness knows what she could do in various other events that we haven't even really seen her try. I think there's a good 400 free in there, but I think it's always been at it hasn't been in an optimal time in any kind of rested championships that she's been to see what she can actually do.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think what I also quite like is 400 in the 200 back when she swims it, but obviously in the 400 time as well, is this kind of rivalry that she's now got with Katie Shanahan, which sort of echoes Amy Wilmot and Hannah Miley, for that long period of time, especially the Scotland-England dynamic as well. And that's got to help kind of each of them. I mean, Katie no doubt would have watched Freya do really well in Doha and think, well, I could have done that, and want to prove herself coming back the other way. We've not seen the best of Katie so far this season. I guess she's been in heavy training and not had a taper of any sort so far. But their showdown in the 400 IM particularly is probably going to be a highlight as well.
Yeah, looking forward to that, definitely. And also looking forward to Katie's 200 back, because I feel like that was a bit of a discovery, in the last 18 months or so. And I would really hope to see her get an individual spot in that event as well. Also looking forward to Abby Wood and Katie, particularly in the 200 medley.
Yes. Now, in the 200 back, I boldly predicted this time last year that Katie would break the British record. So 12 months on, I think I'm sticking to that prediction, just for the record, so that I can say that I predicted it, even if it was a bit later than planned. But yes, certainly the time is 2:08.9, so she's well capable of that. She'll be going to the Olympics in that event, you'd think. And likewise, 200 IM, 2:10.6. Qualifying time, that's a little bit tougher, but both her and Abby should be 2:09s, you'd think.
Yeah, they've both broken 2:09s. And then I think we've had a second 200 backstroker go under that 2:08 mark, which is actually really, really exciting, because it's been an event that we haven't had anyone swimming individually for such a long time.
And it's
Honey
Osrin, yeah. So she went 2:08 something at Bucks, didn't she?
Yeah, she could be, I think 2:08.7 she might have done. She could be our bolter. I
2:08.4. There we are.
2:08.4, even better.
Yeah.
I just want. I just like it when somebody who's not already been on teams makes it, and yes, it's exciting. That's my favourite thing about Olympic trials. I've probably said it about 50 times.
Yes, well, we have mentioned that a few times, and that is the exciting thing, isn't it? Because that's you get the twin kind of emotions, don't you? Olympic trials, you get the joy and the kind of surprise and things for the people who didn't expect to swim as fast as they did and get their spot, but you get the kind of despair for those who felt they could make it and don't, and that could easily be the last time they swim. So it's high stakes, as you said at the start.
Yeah. Both brilliant and hard to watch, and obviously much higher and lower to be those people. It's all the emotions everywhere.
All right, okay, well, let's move on from that. Is there anything else that you're particularly looking forward to seeing? I mean, I've asked you lots of stuff, you've put forward lots of things you're looking to see, but any other events that have caught your eye?
Well, I'm reluctant to get too excited about young swimmers, but obviously I'd like to see what Amelie's going to put together in the distance freestyle events. That's Amelie Bloxage, and making the Olympic team would be great. It's great for anyone. It's obviously pretty amazing when you're that young, but I am just really interested to see what she can do.
Yes, and I know Bob will be very interested to see what she can do as well, because he's a big supporter of hers. But she was 16:10 in the 1500 county championships February time. She needs to go 16:01. I mean, she's young, she's improving fast. She took 9 seconds off to get to 16:10. Can she take another 9 seconds off to get to 16:01? I don't think I'd bet against it, I have to say.
No, I wonder if the discretion would be exercised on the grounds of being young and good. I don't know. I suppose that's why it's discretion. There isn't you don't have to justify it, do you?
You can kind of see why they would do it. If she went 16:02 or 16:03, say, I think that they would take the punt that she's going to drop another 10 seconds in the next 6 months and take her. But will her age count against her in that context? I don't know. But I think it's a fairly good bet that we will see her in Paris one way or the other. Now, is there anything I'm looking forward to particularly that I haven't already spoken about? That's a good question. I'm
sorry I didn't even ask. How rude of me.
No. I really want to see what Ben Prowl can do, because obviously he did that amazing 50 free short course just before Christmas, and he was a bit off his best, but still very solid at Worlds in February. So I want to see if he can get back down into the 21s, nice and low in the 21s, 21.88 the time he's chasing. But I think he can do that almost certainly. He was faster than that at Worlds, but it'd be nice to see him get closer down to that 21 second mark. So that's something I will be keeping an eye out. And I think the women's fly, because I know we've spoken on this podcast about having a bit of a fly issue in medley relay terms, but there have been some really encouraging swims from Kiana McInnes, Edinburgh and Bucks, and maybe this is the moment where she'll drop another load of time. She has probably the hardest qualifying time. Well, her and the others in that event chasing qualification have the hardest time because it's the only one that's faster than the British record, 57.17, what they're aiming for. But it will be nice to see someone go close to that, if not under it.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say I'm ready for us to do a decent women's 100 fly. We've obviously got some great swimmers in the 200 fly, and Kiana is one of them. But it's something we've been missing for a while now, and I'm ready to see that spot filled.
Yeah, well, fingers.
There was also certainly very encouraging short course swim from Lucy Grieve earlier in the year. I haven't seen it translate to long course yet, but it's encouraging to see it kind of regardless of the pool length. So if it can translate, I think this is the year to do it. And we've seen people who aren't necessarily kind of big, known names make that take that medley relay spot. We saw it in Tokyo. So fingers crossed that someone can step up and make it, and maybe for an individual spot.
Yeah. Well, all will become clear in London in not too long. A couple of other things just to note. I think it's worth making the point that this championships has also got a para swimming element to it. So there are multi-classification para events looped into the programme, and there is a para final that's replaced one of the finals that we've had in previous years. So in some years we've had 4 finals, junior final, some sort of target, Tokyo, highway to LA, whatever final, big final, and then an open final. One of those is gone, and we just have a junior final, a B final, and an open final in the able-bodied swimming, and then a para final slotted in. So I think that's quite a nice thing to have added to this meet, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wasn't on board with the 4 finals. It's too many, and I was sort of getting a little bit confused about what they were all for. That sounds pretty sensible, and always good to have the para swimmers involved as well, and to be able to kind of share the stage all together is a good opportunity.
Indeed, and the other kind of benefit that's flowed from that is Channel 4, who are big supporters of parasport, will also stream these championships in addition to the BBC having it on iPlayer on their website. So that's more eyeballs, hopefully, attracted to the meet, which can only be a good thing. One final thing, I think, just to make note of before we draw things to a close. This we've been referring to this as the British Championships all the way through. There is a name change that has come into force for British swimming. They are no longer British swimming. The trend for aquatics that started at world level and trickled down to European aquatics just a few days ago has made its way to Britain, and we're no longer British swimming. We are Aquatics GB. So it's the Aquatics GB Swimming Championships, Katie.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Obviously, it will make all the difference to how fast everybody swims. But maybe a sensible choice, given that they do look after water polo and diving and artistic swimming and marathon swimming, high diving. Have I missed one?
Octopus.
I don't think
they're
I'm not quite sure Octopus is under the bracket yet. No, indeed not. But there we are. No doubt we will hear more about that at the meet itself, and going forward you'll have to get used to that different name. But quite apart from that, the swimming promises to be exciting. Katie, I know we're excited. We've said it a few times, but you're looking forward to things. Any final thoughts before we call it a day?
No, I would just like to say that anybody who's listening and considering making an Olympic team, particularly if you're not, one of those who might already have your name inked on the list, please make the Olympic team, because it would make my day. Thank you very much. And it's all about me.
Obviously. Well, we'd obviously wish everybody who is competing the best of luck. we will be back after the meet to review what's happened. During the competition, I'll be keeping tabs on where the selection is heading, who's on, who's off, who's in the mix possibly for those runner-up spots. So keep an eye on my social media, at Poolboy on X or at Poolboy UK on Instagram and Facebook if you want to follow along on those. But until we're back after the competition, I say thank you to Katie. Always great chatting.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we'll be back afterwards. So thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Poolboy Podcast. For more episodes, visit www.poolboy.co.uk/podcast.